Our first comparison topic for today is the joint American, British, and French attack in Syria over the weekend. Mike, let's start with you, Israeli press. What do they got?
You know, it was mainly covered from the same perspective, and that was that the strike, even though on its surface would seem to benefit Israel because it's attacking a rival in Bashar al-Assad and Iranian forces there, really there's no long-term benefit if the U.S. is to pull out of the region anyway. In the short term, it actually might harm Israel. Take a look at an analysis here from Tzvi Barel from Haaretz, basically saying that the result of the strike could be more aggression from Russian President Vladimir Putin, maybe giving more air defenses to Syria and limiting Israeli sovereignty to operate freely in the airspace above Syria. So it actually could be to Israel's detriment. They previously had, to a large extent, a free reign as far as airspace operation over Syrian skies. This may turn the tables as far as Vladimir Putin is concerned.
Yeah, they're talking about giving them actual equipment, right? Like the S-300, S-400 anti-aircraft
top-level
missiles.
stuff.
Yeah, which of course Israel is concerned about.
Without a doubt. Times of Israel pretty much taking the same stance, and it was almost a consensus among the Israeli media. Israel fears that Donald Trump sees the job as being done in Syria, mission accomplished, as he said, and Israel is now going to be alone to fend itself off, and again, in a worse position because Russia may react negatively toward Israel because of its alliance with the United States. So mainly, almost to a paper, almost to an outlet, every analysis sees this as not a gain for Israel, but a detriment in the aftermath of these airstrikes.
By the way, have you noticed that Trump tweets? I think he tweets more about what's going on at home than he does about Syria.
He tweeted mission accomplished, and then it was back to James Comey.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, thanks a lot. Mohammed Al-Qasim, Arab Press.
Arab press, Middle Eastern press, it's still dividing the entire Middle East. This issue of the Syrian conflict and even the military action taken by the UK, US, and France, it did not change much on the ground. I chose two headlines from two different publications. We'll start with the Arab News, a newspaper out of Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has been a staunch supporter of the Syrian opposition. They have called for the removal of President Bashar al-Assad since the get-go, from the beginning in 2011. And what does this say? Crime and punishment. Crime referring to the alleged chemical attack in Douma. Punishment is what took place yesterday morning, early morning. That is the military attacks. And they have two major pictures there. On the right, this is a cruise missile being fired from one of the U.S. carriers. And the other one to the left is the crime, and that is the alleged chemical attack. So the picture on the right is the punishment. This has definitely divided this region.
Well, it just goes down the line of the Shia-Sunni divide again, doesn't it? Or is it a bit more nuanced than that?
Kind of, yeah, for the most part. Even though we've heard from some Sunni groups, such as Hamas, Islamic Jihad, that they were against this military hit. But also, you know what's interesting, Ami? That we did not hear a whole lot from Egypt or Jordan. They both kind of called for a political, peaceful resolution to the conflict in Syria. That they didn't come out publicly condemning, nor that they came out in agreement or supporting. Listen, they both are in a very difficult position.
Yeah.
Egypt have had, for the last couple of years since President, and 4 years since President Sisi took office, they have been kind of tilting a little bit toward President Bashar al-Assad. Yeah. This is a national, Egypt has been known to be the leader of the Arab world, and this goes along with its ideology. For Jordan, it's in a very difficult predicament. They don't want to upset a neighboring country that maybe at some point may turn on them if things quiet down. Okay. We'll move to another newspaper, and that is Al-Watan out of Syria, major newspaper there. And look at this huge front page. The first one, and you'll see the Syrian. That's a Syrian missile, by the way, that allegedly downed the U.S., British, as well as French missiles. And it says, "You brought back my dignity. You brought back my identity." Underneath that, in the picture, above the picture, and the bottom half of this front page, President Assad will only increase our determination to crush terrorism. Two absolutely different extreme positions on the from different views on what happened yesterday morning.
Is that a state-owned newspaper, the Syrian one?
This one, no. There are others, but it doesn't matter. If you're printed out of Syria, there's no opposition newspaper.
Right, because it's just the message the state itself is trying to send. This is something that's
this is not
doesn't go out of bounds.
Definitely not the state telling them what to say, but it goes exactly along the lines of what the state messages.
Yeah, I love that image of the missile, the power, the fact that this government is still functioning, it's still fighting. That's the message that they want to convey.
Isn't it?
Keep in mind that the military actions yesterday are viewed in Syria, even in some other Arab countries such as Lebanon, in certain parts of the Arab world, as a victory for Syria.
Yeah.
This is three major global powers who are opposing and undertaking a military offensive on an Arab country.
Definitely.
And they're challenging it.
Okay, very interesting. Owen, international press.
International press. Ami, we're going to start with the gray lady with the New York Times. And with its editorial a few days before the strike, which was a long editorial talking all about Syria. And Ami, it said absolutely nothing. Read that editorial and try to tell me what Donald Trump should do. You won't be able to. The editorial doesn't say it. It goes on and on about how Donald Trump needs a strategy in Syria. You can see that quote on the screen.
Yeah.
How important a strategy is, but the New York Times has no idea what that strategy should be. The editorial doesn't tell us anything about what that strategy should be. It kind of says Trump should, that the chemical attack is terrible and it's awful and oy vavoy, and that Donald Trump maybe should do some kind of attack, but that he should coordinate with his allies and he should make sure not to get too involved and he should have this strategy. But it really says absolutely nothing. I had the impression after reading the editorial that the only purpose of the editorial was to give the New York Times some way to bash Donald Trump, no matter what he did. Right. In fairness, they have not done that since the strike. They give a lot of credit to Jim Mattis, but haven't really taken it at the president, which was admittedly a very hard decision. Next, we'll go on to the Global Times. This is a English-language newspaper out of China, and its editorials are widely read because, Ami, they're seen as reflecting the official state view, the message that the Chinese government wants to tell you if they have 2 minutes of your time when you read an English language article. And this was all about the clash, as the Chinese see it, between the West and Russia, and really goading Russia into retaliating. China has two interests in Syria. Number one, it doesn't like the idea of interfering in a country's internal affairs. It's not something China would like to see happen inside its own borders, even if that were to be realistic given China's military. And second, seems to want to see this as an opportunity to try to take Russia's place as the vanguard against the West and try to capture that anti-American, anti-Western segment of global public opinion. So trying to tell the Russians, do you really hate the United States and hate the West? If so, you better attack. If not, you're not for real.